The light that filled the chamber of celestial adjudication was not born of any star. It was the distilled essence of certainty, a luminescence that emanated from the very crystalline architecture of the great hall. It flowed from the impossibly high, vaulted ceilings, refracting through air that shimmered with latent power, and pooled in the heart of the chamber where the Ethelgard conclave sat in silent, magnificent judgment. Their forms, tall and gracile, were themselves conduits for this inner light, their semi-translucent skin glowing with the serene, unwavering pulse of a species that had long ago accepted its place as the universe's ordained shepherds. They did not rule, they guided. They did not conquer, they brought harmony. They were not merely powerful, they were, in every meaningful sense of the word, divine. And today, for the first time in millennia, that divinity felt the cold touch of doubt. Prime Luminar Valerius, his inner light a steady, authoritative gold, rested his slender hands upon the cool, responsive surface of the judgment dais. Before him, a holographic sphere of the Ethelgard dominion floated, a tapestry of nebulae and star systems bound together by shimmering lines of their influence, the great harmony they had so carefully constructed. But at its periphery, a single, discordant point of utter blackness had appeared. It was a void in their perfection, a mote of dust on a flawless lens. It was a ship. A single, insignificant vessel of unknown origin that had breached the sanctified borders of their space without announcement, without supplication, and without the deference due to gods. It does not respond to our overtures. Grand Marshal Kalen's voice was a low, resonant rumble, the sound of grinding tectonic plates. His own light was a deep, simmering crimson, the color of a dying star, and barely contained impatience. He stood rigid, his posture a testament to a lifetime of command. For 3 cycles it has drifted, silent and dark, ignoring the sacred call of the luminar weave. It is an act of supreme arrogance, or supreme ignorance. The two are often indistinguishable, Marshal, murmured chronicler Lyra, her own luminescence a soft, inquisitive silver. She was ancient even by their standards, and her gaze was fixed on the tactical display, her mind sifting through millennia of records. Its energy signature is perplexing. It radiates nothing, yet absorbs everything. Our deep scans refract from its hull as if from a singularity. There is no drive plume, no radiation leakage, no life sign emanations. By all the doctrines, it should not exist. It is a scar upon the fabric of reality. Valerius watched the dark shape on the display. It was angular, brutalist, a shard of obsidian against the velvet cosmos. It lacked the elegant, flowing lines of an Ethelgard light sailor, the organic beauty of a Xylos bioship, or the geometric complexity of a Signian construct. It was utterly, offensively mundane in its design, yet its very presence screamed a defiance that shook the Prime Luminar to his core. For eons, their dominion had been absolute. Lesser species rose and fell, guided by their unseen hand. They quelled stellar flares, diverted rogue planetoids, and seeded barren worlds with the potential for life, all from their celestial throne. Their power was a fundamental law of this galactic arm, as immutable as gravity. And this thing simply did not acknowledge it. Its silence is a message, Kalen insisted, taking a step forward. The crimson light within him flared. It is a challenge. It probes our defenses, measures our response time. It is the vanguard of an invasion, a scouting party for a force that believes it can contest the ordained order. We must show it the folly of its trespass. One vessel from the celestial fleet will unmake it. A single lance of pure creation, and this anomaly will be purged. The harmony will be restored. To destroy it is to destroy the knowledge it contains, Lyra countered, her silver light pulsing with gentle reason. We know nothing of its origin, its purpose, its creators. To answer a question with annihilation is the recourse of the fearful, not the divine. We are the Ethelgard. We seek understanding before we pass judgment. Understanding? Kalen scoffed, the sound echoing in the vast chamber. What is there to understand? It is a foreign body, a disease in the celestial organism. It must be excised. Prime Luminar, your hesitation emboldens this intruder. Every moment we debate, we project weakness. Valerius remained silent, his gaze lost in the void ship's inscrutable form. Weakness. The concept was almost alien to him. Their power was absolute, their wisdom infinite. But Lyra's words resonated with a deeper truth. Their divinity was predicated on understanding, on a knowledge so complete that it granted them mastery over the physical laws of the universe. To fear the unknown, to lash out at it with brute force, was to admit a limit to that knowledge. It was to admit fallibility. He felt a tremor of that feeling now, a subtle dissonance in the perfect hum of his own being. The ship was not merely a strategic problem, it was a philosophical one. It was an unanswered question, and its existence implied that there were questions the Ethelgard could not answer. "It has made a move." Lyra's voice cut through the tension, her tone sharp with sudden focus. The holographic display shimmered, zooming in on the dark vessel. For the first time since its arrival, the ship was no longer inert. A single, faint pulse of energy emanated from it, not a weapon discharge, not a communication attempt on any known frequency, but something else entirely. It was a simple, elegant sequence of mathematics. A pattern of prime numbers, broadcast on a carrier, wave so fundamental it was almost background radiation. Kalen's crimson light darkened. A code, a virus, it attempts to infect our systems with its primitive logic. "No," Lyra whispered, her silver glow brightening with dawning comprehension. "It is not an attack. It is a greeting. It is the most basic universal language imaginable, the language of reality itself. They are telling us they are intelligent. They are telling us they are capable of abstract thought. It is an introduction." Valerius felt the chamber grow cold. An introduction. The lesser species they shepherded did not introduce themselves. They prayed. They sent tribute. They sang hymns of praise to the distant, glowing gods who kept their worlds from chaos. They did not send elegant, cold, mathematical proofs of their own sentience. This was the gesture of an equal. The thought was so profoundly heretical that it almost destabilized his inner light. He felt a flicker of gold, a momentary wavering of the certainty that had defined his entire existence. An equal. In a universe where they were the undisputed apex, the very concept was a paradox. "They assume a great deal." Kalen's voice was dangerously low. "They assume we are listening. They assume we care for their mathematical games. They assume they have the right to address us." "They assume correctly on all accounts," Valerius said, his voice finally breaking his long silence. It was calm, measured, but imbued with the full weight of his authority. The golden light within him solidified, burning away the flicker of doubt. Fear was an indulgence he could not afford. "They have presented us with a question, and we will provide them with an answer. Not with a lance of fire, Marshal, but with the voice of the conclave. Chronicler, open a channel. Use the same fundamental carrier wave. We will greet these strangers in a language they understand." Lyra's silver form bowed in acknowledgement, her slender fingers dancing over her console. Kalen's crimson light pulsed with protest, but he remained silent, held in check by the Prime Luminar's unyielding command. A new energy filled the chamber, a tension far deeper than mere military concern. It was the tension of a paradigm about to be tested, of a faith about to face an unholy revelation. For millennia, the Ethelgard had spoken, and the universe had listened in reverent silence. Now, for the first time, someone was speaking back. Valerius focused his will, his consciousness preparing to project itself across the void, to grace these audacious strangers with a divine audience. He would be magnanimous, he decided. He would be patient. He would explain to them the order of things, their place within it, and the grave error they had made in their approach. He would be a god correcting a mortal transgression. He could not possibly have conceived of the truth, that he was about to become the supplicant. The bridge of the human warship UNS Vindicator was a place of profound and deliberate silence. There were no grand pronouncements, no shimmering energy fields, no celestial light filtering through crystalline walls. It was a space of muted grays and deep blacks, of functional consoles and hardened alloys designed to withstand the raw fury of the void. The only light came from the soft, data-rich glow of tactical displays and the vast, unblinking panorama of the forward view screen. On it, the Ethelgard Dominion glittered, a breathtaking swirl of cosmic dust and divine light, a sight of such impossible beauty it could have been mistaken for the antechamber of heaven itself. But the crew of the Vindicator did not see heaven. They saw a problem. Captain Eva Rostova stood at the center of the command deck, her posture as unyielding as the ship's armored hull. Her face, etched with the faint lines of 1,000 calculated risks, was impassive as she watched the Ethelgard's home system. She was not a warrior in the way the beings she was about to meet would understand the term. Her battles were fought not with weapons of fire, but with weapons of information, of logic, and of unassailable truth. Her uniform was simple, a dark, practical gray that absorbed the light, a stark contrast to the radiant beings she was observing. "Signal acknowledged, Captain," Communications Officer Jian Li reported, her voice calm and even, a trained counterpoint to the monumental event unfolding. "They are responding on the same carrier frequency. They are attempting to establish it appears to be a direct consciousness projection, a high-bandwidth telepathic broadcast, for lack of a better term." "No surprises there," Rostova said, her eyes never leaving the view screen. Their technology is integrated with their biology. They don't see a distinction between thought and energy. Let them through. Isolate the projection in the center of the bridge. No direct interface with ship systems. Aye, Captain. Projection field is stable. A shimmer of gold coalesced in the air before the command chair. It was not a hologram, not a mere image, but something more substantial. It felt as though reality itself had been momentarily bent to accommodate the presence of the being now forming within the light. The prime luminar Valerius appeared, not as a physical entity, but as a perfect, self-contained thought form. He was magnificent, his golden light a radiant aura of power and ancient wisdom. His voice, when it came, was not a sound that traveled through the air, but a concept that bloomed directly in the minds of every human on the bridge. It was a voice accustomed to absolute, unquestioning obedience. I am Valerius, Prime Luminar of the Ethelgard Conclave, Shepherd of the Great Harmony. You have entered our sacred domain, a sanctuary forged by our will from the chaos of the void. You have remained silent in the face of our grace. Your vessel is an affront, a discordant note in the celestial symphony. Speak and account for your trespass. Your existence in this space is tolerated only by our mercy. Explain yourselves that we may pass judgment upon you. The silence that followed was, to Valerius, an eternity. He was accustomed to immediate prostration, to awe, to fear. The beings before him were nothing. Small, soft-skinned creatures of flesh and bone, clad in drab fabric. They sat at their consoles, their faces illuminated by pale blue light, showing no reaction at all. Their leader, a female of the species, simply stood and watched him, her expression unreadable. There was no terror in her eyes, no reverence. There was only a quiet, unnerving stillness. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was not a mental projection, but a simple, acoustic vibration that the ship's universal translator rendered into the Ethelgard's conceptual language. It was flat, devoid of the majestic resonance he expected. I am Captain Eva Rostova of the United Nations Ship Vindicator. We are representatives of the human species. We have not trespassed. This region of space is, according to our navigational charts and all observable laws of physics, open territory. We have remained silent out of professional courtesy to allow you time to observe us and formulate a non-hostile response. We are here to talk. The sheer audacity of the statement struck Valerius with physical force. Open territory. The very idea was blasphemous. This was their garden, their creation, professional courtesy. The condescension was breathtaking. They had been observing him. He, who could unmake suns, was being observed by these fleeting creatures of mud and water. Your charts are irrelevant, Valerius projected, his golden light flaring with indignation. Your laws of physics are incomplete. Our will is the only law that governs this dominion. You speak of courtesy, yet you arrive in a vessel of war. Rostova's gaze drifted to the tactical display for a moment. The Vindicator is designated as a heavily armored diplomatic cruiser and mobile archive. Its armaments are for defensive purposes only. We have encountered misunderstandings in the past. It is a logical precaution when meeting a civilization that announces its presence by proclaiming itself divine. The subtle, cutting logic of her words was like 1,000 tiny needles against his consciousness. She was not arguing. She was stating facts. She was deconstructing his entire posture of authority with simple, irrefutable observations. The foundations of his reality, the bedrock of his identity, began to feel like sand. Divinity is not a proclamation, Valerius countered, trying to regain control. It is a state of being. It is the ability to shape reality, to maintain order where there would be chaos, to nurture life where there would be only oblivion. We are the architects of this peace. Your very existence is likely a product of cosmic conditions we ourselves have stabilized. An interesting hypothesis, Rostova said, her tone unchanged. We have our own records of our species' evolution. They are quite comprehensive, but that is not why we are here. We did not come to debate theology. We came to deliver a message. Valerius felt a surge of coldness that had nothing to do with the temperature of the human ship. A message. They had presumed to bring him a message, as if he were a mere provincial governor and they an imperial envoy. The power dynamic he had assumed, the natural order of the universe as he knew it, was being inverted before his very eyes. Deliver it then, he commanded, his mental voice sharp and imperious. Rostova nodded to her science officer. Mr. Chen, please transmit packet Alpha, display it on the main screen overlaid on their local star map. The view screen flickered. The glorious image of the Ethelgard Dominion remained, but superimposed upon it were lines of data, complex equations, and stellar decay charts that were alien to Valerius. He saw his own star, the source of their power, the heart of their empire. But the human data showed it differently. It showed gravitational lensing anomalies, impossible energy-to-mass ratios, and a containment field signature so ancient it predated the Ethelgard race by millions of years. "Your star system is not natural," Rostova stated, her voice as calm and steady as a surgeon's scalpel. "It is an artificial construct, a stellar nursery encased in a temporal and dimensional shell. Your great harmony is not an order you have imposed upon the universe. It is the carefully managed environment of a preserve. You are not gods shaping reality. You are the inhabitants of a terrarium." The words struck with the force of a physical blow. In the chamber of celestial adjudication, a collective gasp of disbelief rippled through the assembled Ethelgard. Kaelin's crimson light surged into a furious, violent storm. Lyra's silver aura flickered and dimmed, her mind struggling to process the impossible data now flowing into her own systems from the human transmission. Valerius felt his own golden light shatter, the perfect, serene core of his being cracking under the weight of a truth so profound, so utterly devastating that it threatened to extinguish him. The lie. The title of the prompt echoed in this moment. Everything they believed was a lie. Blasphemy, Valerius's projection roared, his form losing its cohesion for a moment, wavering like a flame in the wind. "You are primitives. You dare to interpret the work of gods with your crude instruments and flawed logic. You see a garden and call it a cage." "We see the cage because we are from outside it," Rostova replied, her voice softening with a trace of something Valerius could not identify. It was not pity, it was something closer to empathy. "We have mapped the true galactic structure. We have seen the chaos you have been shielded from. Look." The image on the screen changed again. It pulled back, revealing the Ethelgard's dominion as a tiny, unnaturally calm bubble in a sea of cosmic violence. They showed him galactic jets, colliding neutron stars and waves of gamma radiation that scoured entire sectors of space clean. They showed him the raw, untamed, magnificent, and terrifying universe that existed just beyond the borders of his perception. A universe his people had never known, because they had been deliberately and meticulously isolated from it. "Your technology," Rostova continued, her voice gentle but relentless. "The luminar weave, your light sailors, your ability to manipulate energy, you operate them through ritual and dogma, do you not? You follow ancient doctrines passed down through generations. But do you understand the core principles? Could you build them from scratch?" Valerius had no answer. The question itself was a spear through the heart of his pride. They were inheritors, not innovators. They had always known this, deep down, but had shrouded it in the myth of divine intuition. The sacred texts were not holy scripture. They were instruction manuals they could no longer fully comprehend. Who, the word was a shattered whisper in the minds of the human crew. Who would do this? Why? "We do not know," Rostova answered honestly. "The creators of this place are long gone. We call them the progenitors. We have found their relics scattered across the galaxy, always ancient, always silent. But they left things behind, tools, and sometimes wards. This system, your home, is the most sophisticated and intact progenitor artifact we have ever discovered. It is not just a nursery, it is a fortress, and we believe we know what it was built to protect you from." She gestured to the communications officer again. "Giant, transmit the second packet, the signal." A new wave of data flowed from the Vindicator. It was not a map or a scientific analysis. It was an audio file, a waveform of a signal they had been tracking for decades, a faint, repeating whisper from the unimaginable darkness of intergalactic space. It was a sound of pure, mathematical dread, a warning, and it was getting closer. The chamber of celestial adjudication was now a cavern of shattered faith. The steady, harmonious light that had defined the Ethelgard for uncounted ages had been reduced to a frantic, discordant flickering. The perfect symphony had become a cacophony of fear. Grand Marshal Kaelin's crimson aura was a raging inferno, his entire being rejecting the human's revelation with every fiber of his being. He saw it not as a truth, but as a weapon, a psychic assault designed to break their will and dismantle their civilization from within. It was the most insidious form of warfare imaginable. "Lies," his voice boomed through the chamber, shaking the very crystals of the walls. "A torrent of deception crafted by primitives who envy our perfection. They cannot match our power, so they seek to poison our spirit. They show us phantoms on their screens and call it truth. Prime Luminar, end this farce. Give me the command to purify their vessel with holy fire. Let us show them the true nature of the gods they seek to defame." But Valerius was no longer listening. His consciousness had recoiled from the bridge of the human ship, not out of anger, but out of a profound, soul-crushing shock. His golden light had dimmed to a pale, sickly yellow, the color of a guttering candle. He stood on the dais, his form seeming less substantial, as if the truth had physically stripped away a layer of his existence. He saw the faces of his conclave, their own lights wavering between terror, denial, and a dawning, horrifying acceptance. He looked at chronicler Lyra. Her silver glow was faint but steady, and in her ancient eyes he saw not the panic of a zealot, but the grim focus of a scholar who has just been handed the key to a forbidden library. "Data is consistent, Prime Luminar," Lyra said, her voice quiet but carrying an immense weight. "Their stellar cartography matches anomalies our own deep-range observatories have hinted at for centuries, anomalies the doctrine commanded us to ignore as statistical noise. Their analysis of our star, it explains the energy fluctuations that have been increasing in recent cycles, fluctuations our own rituals have failed to stabilize. What they say, it has the terrible, unyielding texture of reality." "Reality is what we will it to be," Kalen roared. "Our faith is the engine of creation. If we believe we are gods, then we are. This is a test, a trial sent to challenge our conviction." Valerius slowly raised his head, his gaze meeting Kalen's fiery one. The Prime Luminar's voice, when it came, was raspy, stripped of its former divine resonance. It was the voice of a man, not a god. "And what if our faith has been a cage, Marshal? A beautiful, comfortable cage we were taught to call a throne? For millennia, we have recited the ancient verses to command our ships, to raise our cities, to mend the stars. We believed it was prayer. The humans have shown us that it may only be a series of activation codes for a machine we did not build." He turned his attention back to the holographic display, where the image of the human captain, Rostova, still waited with inhuman patience. She was not gloating. She was not demanding surrender. She was simply waiting. She had delivered her truth, and now she was allowing them the dignity to process it, to grieve for the universe they had lost. The gesture was one of profound respect, a respect they had never shown to any other species, because they had never considered any other species worthy of it. "Why?" Valerius asked, his voice now a raw whisper projected back across the void to the Vindicator. "Why tell us this? You could have passed us by. You could have studied us from afar, another curious relic in your museum of a galaxy. Why shatter our world?" On the bridge of the Vindicator, Captain Rostova's expression remained placid, but a new depth entered her eyes. It was the weary look of someone who had carried a heavy burden for a very long time. "Because we didn't have a choice," she replied, her translated voice echoing in the silent chamber. "The containment field around your system is failing. The power source, your artificially stabilized star, is beginning to decay. Our projections give it less than 500 of your cycles before it collapses. The progenitors, your creators, are gone. They are not coming back to fix it." A new wave of horror washed over the conclave. The end of their world was not a matter of theology, but of engineering. Their apocalypse had a timeline. Rostova continued, her voice pressing on with the calm, relentless force of a glacier. "And then there is the signal we showed you, the one from outside the galaxy. We call it the Silence. Everywhere we have detected its approach, we have found worlds that have gone dark. Civilizations, advanced and primitive alike, simply cease to broadcast. It is not a wave of destruction. It is an absence, a nullification. The progenitors didn't build this place just to nurture you. They built it to hide you. You and perhaps something else stored within your system. But the shield is failing and the silence is coming. In your current state, isolated, arrogant, and ignorant of the true nature of your reality, you would be utterly defenseless. You would be extinguished without ever knowing why." She paused, letting the full weight of her words settle. "We told you the truth because your survival and possibly ours depends on you accepting it. We are not here to pass judgment. We are not here to conquer you. We are here to offer you a partnership. We are here to ask for your help." The final sentence was the one that broke through Kalen's rage. Help. These mortals in their crude metal ship were asking for help from the Ethelgard. The idea was so preposterous, so contrary to the established order of the universe, that it bypassed his anger and struck directly at his warrior's pride. But beneath the pride, a seed of logic began to sprout. If the humans were lying, their lie was impossibly elaborate and served no discernible purpose. If they were conquerors, this was the most inefficient invasion strategy imaginable. If they wanted help, then they must be facing a threat so vast that they were willing to risk awakening a race they knew to be technologically superior, even if that superiority was based on borrowed power. Valerius closed his eyes. The golden light within him was almost gone, replaced by the faint, pure white glow of a soul stripped bare. He was no longer a Prime Luminar. He was no longer a shepherd of the cosmos. He was the leader of a people who had just woken from a beautiful dream to find their house was on fire. All their rituals, all their doctrines, all their beliefs were now just ashes in his hand. But in those ashes, he found something new. Something he hadn't felt in a millennium of serene godhood: clarity. "You said you are a mobile archive," Valeria said, his voice stronger now, imbued with a new, quiet authority. "Your ship contains knowledge." "It does," Rostova confirmed. "Centuries of scientific learning, physics, engineering, xenobiology, everything our species has learned about the universe beyond your shell." "The knowledge to understand our own technology," Valeria stated. It was not a question. "Yes, and the knowledge to repair it, perhaps even to improve it. But we lack the interface. Our technology is rudimentary compared to the progenitor systems you inhabit. We have the instruction manual, but you are the only ones with the key." The symbiosis was perfect. The tragic, beautiful irony of it settled over Valerius like a shroud. The humans possessed the understanding, but not the means. The Ethelgard possessed the means, but not the understanding. They were two halves of a single, functional whole. Divided, they were a curious relic and a fledgling spacefaring race, both doomed. Together they might be something more. He opened his eyes and looked at his conclave. He saw the terror in their flickering lights, but he also saw a glimmer of hope. The great harmony was a lie, yes, but a new, truer harmony might be forged in its place. A harmony not of gods and worshippers, but of equals united against a common darkness. He made his decision. The choice was not between faith and despair. It was between a comforting lie and a terrifying truth. And Valerius knew, with a certainty that felt more real than his millennia of divinity, that only the truth offered a future. "Grand Marshal," he said, his voice ringing with a conviction he had not felt since his ascension. Kalen turned, his crimson light now a confused, muted burgundy. "Assemble the celestial fleet, not for war but for study. I want every science vessel, every engineering corpus, every mind that can be spared. Their new mission is not to patrol our borders, but to understand them." He then turned to Lyra. "Chronicler, you will lead this effort. You will work with the humans. You will take their knowledge and merge it with our legacy. Open the archives, all of them. The forbidden texts, the locked codices, everything. We will relearn what it means to be Ethelgard." Lyra's silver light blazed with a brilliance it had not shone in centuries. It was the light of purpose renewed. She bowed deeply. "It will be done, Prime Luminar." Finally, Valerius faced the silent image of the human captain. He offered a gesture of his own, a slight inclination of his head. It was not the bow of a subordinate, but the nod of an equal, a partner. "Captain Rostova," he said, his voice transmitted across the void. "Your offer of partnership is accepted. Bring your ship into high orbit over Ethel. We have much to discuss, and much work to do." On the bridge of the Vindicator, a collective, silent breath was released. Captain Rostova gave a curt nod in return, her face betraying no emotion save for a deep, profound solemnity. "We are on our way, Prime Luminar Valerius." The golden projection of the Ethelgard leader faded, leaving the bridge of the human ship once again in its quiet, functional silence. The Vindicator, a single dark warship, began to move, its engines firing with quiet efficiency as it maneuvered toward the glittering capital world of a fallen god. They had come as messengers bearing a terrible truth, and now they were staying as architects of a new reality. The age of the Ethelgard gods was over. The age of the Alliance had just begun. In the days and weeks that followed, a transformation occurred that was more profound than any stellar engineering. The Ethelgard, a species defined by static, timeless perfection, began to learn again. Their cities, once silent monuments to their own glory, now buzzed with a new kind of energy, the energy of discovery. Human engineers and scientists were ferried down from the Vindicator, their plain, functional tools and drab uniforms a strange sight amidst the luminous, crystalline architecture. They did not command or dictate, they taught. They opened consoles that had been operated by rote for 10,000 years and explained the quantum mechanics that underpinned them. They translated the sacred verses into the stark, beautiful language of mathematics and physics. For the Ethelgard, it was a painful and exhilarating rebirth. The younger generations, less shackled by millennia of dogma, embraced the new knowledge with a fervor their elders found both shocking and inspiring. They began to experiment, to innovate, to ask questions that had long been considered heresy. They discovered their divine light was a sophisticated form of biologically integrated energy manipulation, a tool of immense power they had only ever used at a fraction of its potential. They learned that their light sailors could do more than just glide on stellar winds. With the right modifications, they could fold space itself. The lie of their divinity had been a cage, but its bars had been forged from their own ignorance. Now, with human knowledge as the key, they were finally learning to unlock it. Valerius and Rostova became the twin pillars of this new alliance. They spent countless hours in conference, one a being of living light who had lost his faith, the other a mortal of flesh and blood who had never needed it. They spoke of philosophy, of history, of the nature of existence. Valerius learned of humanity's tumultuous past, of their wars, their art, their endless, striving ambition. He was humbled by their resilience, their ability to fall and rise again, to build civilizations on the ashes of their own mistakes. They were not perfect, as the Ethelgard had once believed themselves to be, but their imperfection was the source of their greatest strength. It drove them to learn, to adapt, to never accept the universe as a finished work. Rostova, in turn, came to understand the profound burden the Ethelgard had carried. They had been born into a gilded cage, raised to believe they were its masters, only to learn they were its prisoners. Their arrogance had not been born of malice, but of a carefully constructed ignorance. She saw in Valerius not a fallen tyrant, but a leader grappling with the monumental task of guiding his people through a crisis of identity that would have shattered a lesser species. Together they made progress. The combined knowledge of human science and the intuitive interface of Ethelgard consciousness allowed them to begin repairing the containment field. They stabilized the star, arresting its decay and buying themselves precious time. The celestial fleet, once a tool of divine judgment, became a research flotilla, pushing at the boundaries of their stellar nursery, testing its limits, and preparing for the day they would finally step outside. The first joint-crewed vessel, a fusion of human practicality and Ethelgard elegance, was christened the Unbroken Vow, a symbol of their shared future. But the larger threat remained. The signal from the void, the silence, was a constant, chilling reminder of the true stakes. Their work was not merely for self-discovery, it was a race against extinction. It was chronicler Lyra who made the final, critical breakthrough. Deep within the forbidden archives of Ethel, in a data vault sealed since the dawn of their race, she found something that was not a progenitor instruction manual. It was a message, a final testament left behind by their creators, meant to be unsealed only when their divinity was challenged by an outside force, a contingency for the day the children were finally ready to learn the truth about their parents. Valerius and Rostova stood with her in the deepest, most sacred chamber of the archives as Lyra activated the ancient record. A holographic image bloomed in the center of the room. It was not of an Ethelgard, nor a human. It was a being of immense, indescribable complexity, a creature that seemed to be woven from space-time itself. Its voice was a chorus of 1 billion dying stars and 1 billion newborn worlds. If you are seeing this, the progenitor's message began, then the protocols have failed. The great harmony, the shield, has been breached. You have met another sentient species. The time for childhood is over. The image shifted, showing them the true history. The progenitors had not been gods, but refugees. They were the last survivors of a previous galactic cycle, fleeing an enemy that had consumed their entire civilization. An enemy they called the consuming static, the silence between thoughts. It was not a fleet or an empire. It was a form of entropy given malevolent intelligence, a force that did not destroy life, but erased it from existence, feeding on information, on complexity, on consciousness itself. We could not defeat it, the progenitor continued, its voice heavy with sorrow that transcended time. We could only outrun it. But we did not want our legacy to be one of flight, so we created sanctuaries, gardens where new life, new forms of thought could blossom hidden from the silence. Your race, the Ethelgard, was one such seed of hope. We gifted you our tools, but hid the knowledge of them, hoping that in your innocence you would not broadcast the complex thoughts that attract the static. The view on the progenitor archive shifted again, showing a map of the local galactic cluster. Dozens of systems were marked with the same energy signature as the Ethelgard's home. They were not alone. There were other sanctuaries, other children of the progenitors hidden behind similar shields. But we did not leave you defenseless, the voice said, a new, stronger tone entering its chorus. We left you a final inheritance, a weapon, not a weapon of energy or matter, but a weapon of information, a counter-resonance that can disrupt the static. The designs are encoded in the very structure of this world, in the harmonics of your star. But the key to unlocking it, to weaponizing it, is not a thing of logic or science alone. It requires a synthesis. It requires the union of two distinct philosophical matrices. The intuitive, harmonious consciousness of a sheltered race, and the analytical, empirical mind of a race that has known chaos and strife. It requires a species like you, and a species like the one you have just met. Valerius and Rostova looked at each other, the full, staggering weight of the revelation crashing down upon them. Their meeting was not an accident. The entire history of both their species, the long, slow evolution of humanity in the chaotic furnace of the galaxy and the carefully managed, innocent development of the Ethelgard in their perfect garden, had all been part of a desperate, impossibly ancient plan. They were a key and a lock, designed for a door they had never known existed. They had been brought together by fate, by a design so grand it defied comprehension, to be the last hope of a universe facing an enemy that consumed reality itself. The progenitor's final words echoed in the silence of the chamber, a charge given across a gulf of 1,000,000 years. The silence comes. The other sanctuaries will fall. Find them if you can. Unite them. You are no longer children in a garden. You are the inheritors of our war. You are the last echo of our defiance. Do not let the universe fall silent. The image faded, leaving the human captain and the last prime luminar of the Ethelgard standing side by side in the ancient darkness. The lie of their godhood had been stripped away, but in its place stood a truth far greater and more terrifying. They were not gods. They were not even masters of their own destiny. They were soldiers, drafted into a cosmic war before their species had even been born. Valerius looked out from the high balcony of the chamber, no longer a hall of judgment, but a command center for a war he was only just beginning to comprehend. The unbroken vow hung in the sky above, a silver needle against the stardusted night, a symbol of two peoples reforged into one. Beside him, Captain Rostova stared up at the same sky, her face grimly determined. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, clear sense of purpose. Their quest was no longer simply about survival. It was about legacy. It was about honoring the sacrifice of a long-dead race and facing an enemy that was not merely a threat to life, but to existence itself. They had been given their mission: to find the other hidden children of the progenitors, to forge a new alliance from the scattered remnants of a forgotten hope, and to stand together against the encroaching, final silence. The universe was infinitely larger and more terrifying than they had ever imagined, but for the first time they were not facing it alone. The gods were dead, and in their place something far stronger had just been born.